The telepathic probe pierced Queen Saratha's consciousness without warning, a violation so sudden she gasped and gripped the arms of her throne. The human ambassador's mind blazed in her awareness, not the diplomatic surface thoughts she expected, but something deeper, primal, protective. His shield had dropped for just a fraction of a second, and in that instant she felt everything. The weight of concealed weapons beneath his formal coat, the mathematical precision with which he'd calculated firing angles from every corner of the throne room, and beneath it all, a savage determination to keep her alive. Captain Marcus Chen maintained his diplomatic smile, but sweat beaded at his temples. 23 days he'd stood in this court, playing the role of Earth's peaceful emissary to the Zarathi Empire. 23 days of hidden surveillance, of cataloging threats, of standing between humanity's fragile alliance and the faction within the Queen's own court that wanted her dead. Now she knew. He could see it in the way her golden eyes widened, in the sudden rigidity of her spine. Ambassador. Her voice carried the crystalline harmonics of her species, but underneath he heard the tremor. You will accompany me to the private council chamber, immediately.
A protocol demanded she dismiss him through proper channels.
Her 4 honor guards shifted, hands moving towards ceremonial weapons that were anything but ceremonial. Marcus recognized the lead guard, Commander Thane, whose sister had died in the last coup attempt, whose loyalty to certain noble houses ran deeper than his oath to the crown. Marcus bowed, smooth and unhurried. As your majesty commands. They walked through corridors of living crystal that pulsed with bioluminescent light. Marcus counted 12 possible ambush points before they reached the chamber. The Queen's thoughts still leaked into his awareness, fragments of confusion and growing horror as she replayed what she'd felt in his mind. She didn't know about the Zarath conspiracy yet. She didn't know that 3 of her closest advisors had already signed her death warrant. She only knew that the human diplomat had been lying, had been armed, had been waiting for violence. The door sealed behind them. The chamber was small, intimate, a place for the Queen's most trusted confidants. Marcus remained standing, hands clasped behind his back in a posture that looked respectful but kept his weapons accessible. You're a soldier, not a question. Saratha's voice had gone cold. Yes, Earth sent a warrior disguised as a diplomat. You've been scanning my court for threats, carrying weapons in sacred halls, preparing for combat. Her fingers traced patterns on the armrest of her smaller council throne. A nervous gesture he'd learned meant she was processing difficult information. Why? Marcus made his choice in the space between heartbeats. The mission parameters said maintain cover at all costs. But she'd touched his mind. She deserved truth, or at least the parts of it that might keep her alive. Because you have enemies, Your Majesty. Closer than you know. I have many enemies. It's the burden of the crown. Assassins. Within your inner circle. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees, frost forming on the crystal walls. Zarathi emotional control was legendary, but the Queen's power responded to extreme stress. You expect me to believe that Earth discovered a plot against my life that my own intelligence network missed? We were invited to participate. Now he had her full attention. The frost stopped spreading. Marcus continued, speaking quickly. 6 weeks ago, Duke Ferron approached Earth's colonial governor on Threshold Station. He offered favorable trade agreements, territorial concessions, mining rights to 3 systems we've wanted for decades. In exchange, Earth would look the other way when you were eliminated. When we refused, he assumed we'd stay neutral. He didn't know Earth Command would send me. Ferron. She said the name like poison. My late mate's cousin. He always smiled too much. Her eyes narrowed. Show me proof. A holographic display materialized between them. Intercepted communications, financial transfers, shipping manifests for weapons routed through dummy corporations, and finally, the recording from Threshold Station, Duke Ferron's voice smooth and confident, explaining exactly how the Queen would die during the upcoming Festival of Ascension. Saritha watched in silence. When the recording ended, she stood. At full height, she was 7 feet of lean muscle and barely restrained fury, her skin shifting through the chromatic spectrum that indicated extreme emotional distress. The festival begins in 8 hours, she said quietly. According to this, I'm supposed to die during the dawn ceremony. According to this, you're supposed to die from an allergic reaction to the ceremonial incense. Ferron's supplier already replaced the traditional blend with something modified. But he's not working alone. 3 of your advisors helped arrange the logistics. Commander Thane in your honor guard has instructions to delay emergency medical response. Thane. The name came out strangled. I promoted him myself. I stood vigil at his sister's funeral. His sister died because you refused to authorize the military action he requested. He blames you for prioritizing diplomacy over vengeance." The Queen turned away, staring at the crystal walls. Marcus could feel her thoughts even without trying. A cascade of betrayal, the recalculation of every conversation, every trusted moment now suspect. But underneath the pain, something else was crystallizing. Cold, precise fury. When she turned back, her eyes had gone completely black. A Zarathi battle state that most humans never lived to witness. "You've been protecting me," she said. "Not Earth's interests, not the Alliance."
Me.
"Yes. Why?" "Because you're the only leader in this sector working toward actual peace. Because if you die, Pharaon starts a war with the Korvax Federation that will consume 100 worlds. Because," he paused, weighing his next words, "because the right thing and the strategic thing don't always align, but when they do, you take the shot." Then, impossibly, she smiled. It wasn't a kind expression. "Captain Chen, I'm about to ask you to break every diplomatic protocol Earth holds sacred. I'm going to ask you to help me survive the next 8 hours, expose traitors who have the law on their side, and possibly start a civil war within my own court." Marcus returned the smile. "I thought you'd never ask, Your Majesty." "Because I felt your thoughts, Captain. I know exactly how dangerous you are." She moved to the chamber's communications panel. "And right now, I need dangerous." The Festival of Ascension would begin at dawn, a ceremony witnessed by 10,000 Zarathi nobles and broadcast across the Empire. According to Pharaon's plan, the Queen would breathe poisoned incense, collapse during the sacred rites, and die before medical intervention could save her. The chaos would be blamed on old tensions with the Korvax, justifying the military response Pharaon had been advocating for years. But Pharaon hadn't planned for a human soldier who'd spent 23 days memorizing every vulnerability in the palace security. Marcus stood in the preparation chamber, watching servants arrange the ceremonial elements under Saritha's sharp gaze. The incense burners gleamed in the pre-dawn light, already loaded with the poisoned blend. The Queen's formal robes lay ready, woven with thousands of years of tradition. Everything had to appear normal. "Commander Thane will be watching for any deviation," Marcus said quietly. "If we swap the incense now, he'll alert Pharaon." Saritha adjusted her formal crown, her movements precise. "So we don't swap it, I breathe the poison, collapse as planned, and you ensure I don't die from it. That's insane. We don't know the exact compound. The medical response time, Plaza, will be delayed by Thane, yes, which gives us approximately 4 minutes before permanent damage occurs." She turned to face him. "You said you've been calculating angles, Captain. Can you neutralize Thane and reach me with a universal antidote in under 4 minutes? The throne chamber layout. Guard positions. Thane would be standing 3 meters from the Queen, standard honor guard position. The moment she collapsed, he'd move to intercept anyone trying to help, buying time for the poison to work. But if Marcus drew his weapon first, if he was faster than Thane expected, 3 minutes 40 seconds, Marcus said, if everything goes perfectly, then we'd better make it perfect. Mirith entered carrying the medical kit. She was 70 years old, had served 3 monarchs, and according to Marcus's intelligence, was one of 5 people in the palace absolutely beyond corruption. Her expression when Saritha explained the plan would have been funny under different circumstances. "You want to deliberately poison yourself," Mirith said slowly, "so the traitors reveal themselves by preventing your rescue. This is the worst medical decision I've encountered in 43 years of practice." Noted. "Prepare the strongest general antidote we have. Captain Chen will be administering it." Mirith looked at Marcus with profound skepticism. "You're trusting a human to perform emergency Zarathi medicine?" "I'm trusting a soldier to complete his mission." Saritha's tone allowed no argument. "Besides, he's kept me alive for 23 days without me knowing. I think he's earned the chance to do it with my cooperation." The preparations continued. Marcus reviewed the plan obsessively, finding flaws, calculating backups. His neural implant logged every detail, guard rotation schedules, sight lines, evacuation routes, but underneath the tactical analysis, something else gnawed at him. He'd spent weeks watching this queen navigate impossible political situations with patience and intelligence. He'd seen her refuse easy violence, choose diplomacy over expedience, work towards solutions that protected the most vulnerable populations. She reminded him why he'd joined military service in the first place, before bureaucracy and compromise had dulled the idealism. Now she was going to deliberately poison herself based on his intelligence, his planning, his promise to keep her alive. "Second thoughts, Captain," Saritha appeared beside him, somehow reading his expression. Just making sure I haven't missed anything. I felt your thoughts, remember? You're the most paranoid, thoroughly prepared person I've ever encountered. It's actually quite reassuring. She paused, though I'm curious about something. When I touched your mind, underneath all the tactical planning I felt anger. At Pharaon, yes, but also at something else. What? Marcus considered deflecting, but she deserved honesty. At how often good people die because bad people are willing to do terrible things faster. You're trying to build something better, and that makes you a target for everyone who profits from chaos. You sound like you've seen it before. Too many times. It's why I took this assignment. He met her eyes. Earth Command wanted me to maintain cover, gather intelligence, stay neutral. But I was on Caldron IV when their reformist president was assassinated. I watched the sector burn for 3 years afterward. I'm tired of writing after-action reports about promising leaders who died because someone decided their conscience was expendable. Then she placed one long-fingered hand on his shoulder, a gesture of solidarity in Zarathi culture. And let's make sure this particular promising leader survives to frustrate her enemies for years to come. The ceremonial plaza filled with Zarathi nobility in their formal regalia, 10,000 witnesses to the ancient rites, news feeds broadcast to billions across the empire. Marcus stood among the human delegation, wearing formal diplomatic attire that concealed his tactical gear. From this position he had clear sight lines to both the Queen and Commander Thaney. Saritha processed onto the central dais with perfect regal bearing. Her robes caught the rising sun, scattering prismatic light across the assembled crowd. She looked every inch the eternal monarch, showing no sign that in minutes she'd be fighting for her life. The ceremony began. Ancient prayers in the old tongue, responses from the gathered nobles. Marcus watched Thane's positioning. The commander stood exactly where protocol demanded, but his weight was forward on his toes, ready to move. His hand rested near his weapon, fingers twitching microscopically. He was nervous. Good. Nervous people made mistakes. The moment arrived. Saritha knelt before the sacred braziers. The attendants lit the incense, and poisoned smoke began to rise in delicate spirals. Marcus's implant tracked her respiration rate, heart rhythm, neural activity. Everything appeared normal for exactly 12 seconds. Then her pupils dilated. Her breathing hitched. She swayed, caught herself, tried to rise. The crowd murmured, confused. This wasn't part of the ceremony. Saritha took one more breath and collapsed, her body striking the dais with terrible finality. The plaza erupted in chaos. Nobles surged forward. The Queen's attendants screamed. And Commander Thane did exactly what Marcus knew he would do. He moved to intercept the medical team, shouting orders about securing the area, about potential assassination attempts, creating confusion that would delay treatment those critical few minutes. Marcus was already moving. He vaulted over the delegation barrier, sprinting across the ceremonial ground. Security guards moved to intercept, but he'd studied their response patterns. He juked left, rolled under a grasping hand, came up running. 3 minutes 40 seconds. Thane saw him coming. The commander's hand went to his weapon, but Marcus was faster. He drew the neural disruptor from his sleeve and fired in one smooth motion. The blast caught Thane in the chest, dropping him instantly. Non-lethal, but he'd be unconscious for an hour. 2 minutes 50 seconds. Marcus reached the dais and knelt beside Saritha. Her skin had gone gray, her breathing shallow and erratic. Foam flecked her lips. The poison was moving faster than Dr. Mania, Maraith had predicted. He pulled the antidote injector from his coat, found the injection point beneath her jaw, and administered the full dose in one smooth motion. 2 minutes 12 seconds. Nothing happened. Saritha's breathing grew more labored. Her heart rhythm turned irregular. Marcus felt his own pulse hammering. The antidote should be working. Why wasn't it working? Move aside, Dr. Mireth appeared with a full medical team, but Marcus saw other figures in the crowd. Nobles who wore Farron's colors, whose hands moved toward concealed weapons. The plan was falling apart. If Saritha died now, Farron's allies would use the chaos to eliminate witnesses, seize power, blame the assassination on human interference. Marcus made a decision that would either save her or end his career. He activated his neural implant's emergency medical override, linking directly with the Queen's biosignatures through the Zarathi translation technology she'd used to read his thoughts. The connection flared to life, and suddenly he was inside her dying nervous system, feeling the poison spreading through her bloodstream, shutting down synapses, collapsing cellular structures. He forced the antidote molecules to bond faster, using his implant's computational power to accelerate the chemical reactions. It was crude, dangerous, possibly violating a dozen biotechnology treaties, but Saritha's heart rhythm steadied. Her breathing deepened. Color began returning to her skin. 1 minute 8 seconds. The Queen's eyes opened. She looked directly at Marcus, and in that moment of continued neural connection, he felt her gratitude, her determination, and underneath it all, a fierce protective instinct toward him for what he'd just risked. Then she sat up, and the plaza fell silent. Saritha rose to her full height, her voice carrying across the stunned crowd with absolute authority. "Citizens of the Zirathi Empire, you have just witnessed an assassination attempt against your rightful queen. The poison in the ceremonial incense was placed there by traitors within my own court. Commander Thane of my honor guard was complicit in this conspiracy, as were certain noble houses whose names will be revealed during the investigation. This human, Captain Marcus Chen of Earth's Diplomatic Security, uncovered the plot and has spent the past 20 more days protecting my life while gathering evidence against the conspirators. He has just saved me from assassination at great personal risk. Let the record show that Earth stands with the legitimate throne, and that anyone who doubts our alliance can take it up with the captain personally." The crowd erupted, but this time in outrage against the plotters. Security forces moved through the nobles, making arrests based on the evidence Marcus had compiled. He watched Duke Pharaon try to slip away through a side exit, only to find Dr. Myreth standing there with palace guards. The old physician's smile was absolutely terrifying. Marcus helped Saritha down from the dais. She leaned on him more than strictly necessary, still recovering from the poison's effects. "That was closer than I'd like," she said quietly. "Agreed. The antidote should have worked faster. You compensated. I felt what you did with the Neuralink. That was unprecedented. Probably illegal under several treaties. Are you going to report me?" Saritha laughed to sound like crystal bells. "Captain, I'm going to give you a medal. And then I'm going to assign you as my permanent security liaison, because clearly my own people can't be trusted to keep me alive. Your Majesty, I'm just a diplomat." "We both know that's not true." She stopped walking and turned to face him fully. "I felt your thoughts, Marcus Chen. I know what drives you, what haunts you, what you've sacrificed to do the right thing, even when your superiors told you otherwise. You didn't protect me because Earth Command ordered it. You protected me because you believed peace is worth protecting, even at great personal cost." Marcus found himself without words. The Queen's golden eyes held his, and for a moment the chaos of the plaza faded. "Stay," she said simply. "Help me build what we both know is possible. You've proven you can keep me alive. Now help me prove that peace between species isn't just a diplomatic fiction." Before Marcus could respond, a small figure darted through the security cordon. A Zarathi child, no more than 6 years old, with skin that hadn't yet settled into adult coloration. She ran straight to the Queen and wrapped her arms around Saritha's legs. "Mama, the bad people tried to hurt you." Marcus froze. "Mama." The intelligence briefings had never mentioned a child. He looked at Saritha and saw her expression shift, the regal mask falling away to reveal something raw and vulnerable underneath. "Lysa, sweetness, you shouldn't be here. Where's your guardian?" "I ran away when I felt you were scared." The child's voice carried the psychic harmonics of young Zarathi, broadcasting emotions to everyone nearby. "Your thoughts were loud, Mama." "They hurt." Saritha knelt, gathering her daughter close. "I'm all right now, thanks to our friend Captain Chen." Then without warning she reached out and touched his hand. The psychic contact was different from the Queen's, unfiltered, innocent, carrying the overwhelming emotional honesty of children. She felt his exhaustion, his relief, the weight of 23 days of constant vigilance finally lifting. But she also felt something deeper. The grief he carried from Caldron IV, from all the times he'd failed to save promising leaders, from the children orphaned by violence he couldn't prevent. She felt his determination that this time would be different. "You're sad inside," Lysa said solemnly. "But you protected my mama anyway. That's very brave. Your mother is worth protecting. I know, she's the best mama and the best queen." Lysa smiled, a child's absolute faith. "Will you keep protecting her? Please." He looked at Saritha, who watched him with an expression he couldn't quite read. The smart play was to decline, return to Earth, file his report. He'd completed the mission. He'd exposed the conspiracy. His duty was done. But Lysa's small hand was still in his, radiating trust and hope, And Saritha stood there with her daughter, representing everything he'd joined the service to defend. The possibility that different species could coexist, that leaders could choose peace over power, that maybe, just maybe, the universe could be slightly better than it was. Yeah, Marcus said quietly. I'll keep protecting her. Saritha's eyes glistened with something that might have been tears, though Saritha supposedly didn't cry. And in that moment, surrounded by the chaos of the disrupted ceremony and the aftermath of assassination, something fundamental shifted. This wasn't just a mission anymore. It was a choice freely made to stand for something larger than himself. The investigation took 3 days. Duke Ferran and 17 co-conspirators were arrested, their evidence of treason irrefutable. Commander Thane faced court-martial, his betrayal hitting the honor guard particularly hard. The ceremonial incense was analyzed, revealing a neurotoxin sophisticated enough that only Saritha's prepared antidote and Marcus's neural intervention had saved her life. Earth Command sent 12 messages demanding Marcus's return for debriefing. He ignored all of them. Instead, he stood in the palace's private garden, watching Lysa chase luminescent butterflies between flowering crystal formations. Saritha sat on a bench nearby, reviewing reports on her datapad, occasionally looking up to ensure her daughter didn't climb too high. Earth Command is threatening to court-martial you, she said without looking up. I'm aware. I could make you a formal citizen of the Empire. Grant you diplomatic immunity as my chief security advisor. That would complicate their ability to recall you forcibly. That would also permanently end my Earth military career. Is that a career worth keeping? Now she did look up, her golden eyes direct. They ordered you to maintain cover at all costs. They expected you to let me die rather than risk political complications? Does that sound like an organization aligned with your values? Marcus considered this. He'd spent 15 years following orders, trusting that the chain of command knew better than individual soldiers what sacrifices were necessary. But Caldron IV had shaken that faith, and this mission had shattered it completely. When the critical moment came, Earth Command had wanted him to choose diplomatic convenience over a living person's survival. He'd chosen differently, and he couldn't regret it. Make me a citizen, he said. I'll file my resignation with Earth Command today. Welcome to the Zarithi Empire, Captain Shen. Try not to let the bureaucracy kill you. I've already lost one head of security this week. Captain Marcus! Captain Marcus! Mama says you're staying forever. Not quite forever, but for a while, yes. Good, because I wanted to show you something. She grabbed his hand, her small fingers warm against his. The psychic contact was gentle this time, just a whisper of her happiness. Come see. She led him to a section of the garden where the crystal flowers grew in complex geometric patterns. These are memory blossoms, she explained with the seriousness of a child sharing important secrets. They record emotions and play them back. Mama planted one when I was born, and it still shows her being happy. Lysa reached out to touch a particular flower, and suddenly Marcus felt it. Saritha's overwhelming joy at her daughter's first breath, the fierce protective love of a new mother, the determination to build a world where this child could grow up in peace. The emotion was so pure, so powerful, that Marcus had to look away. Mama plants one every year on my birthday, Lysa continued, and she planted a new one yesterday. Want to feel it? Before Marcus could respond, the child touched a newly bloomed crystal. The emotion that flooded through him was complex. Saritha's gratitude for his protection, yes, but also something deeper. Trust. The kind of trust that came from having someone see you at your most vulnerable and choosing to stand beside you anyway. It was the emotional equivalent of the Queen saying, I would trust you with my life and my daughter's life, and that means everything. Marcus cleared his throat. That's quite an honor. Mama likes you, Lysa said matter-of-factly. I can tell from her thoughts. They get all sparkly when you're around. Lisa. Saritha's voice carried across the garden, warmth mixed with embarrassment. Stop broadcasting my private thoughts to our guest. You said honesty is important in relationships. Saritha appeared, moving with the fluid grace of her species, her skin flushed with chromatic patterns that Marcus had learned indicated mild mortification. Lisa, sweetness, there's honesty, and then there's oversharing. You're currently demonstrating the latter. The child giggled and ran off to chase more butterflies. Saritha stood beside Marcus, both of them watching the small figure dance between the crystal formations. My daughter has many virtues, Saritha said quietly. Discretion is not yet among them. In a court full of politicians, that's refreshing. She's also quite perceptive. If she says my thoughts are sparkly, she's probably not wrong. Saritha paused, choosing her words carefully. I've been a widow for 3 years. Lysa's father died in a shuttle accident, though some days I suspect it wasn't entirely accidental. Since then, I've been very careful about who I trust, who I let close to my daughter. You understand why. Of course. But you saved my life, Marcus. More than that, you've shown me that not everyone in positions of power is corrupt or self-serving. You reminded me that sometimes people do the right thing simply because it's right. That's rare and valuable. And yes, perhaps my thoughts do get sparkly when you're around, whatever that means in 6-year-old terminology. Marcus felt heat rising in his face. Your Majesty, Saritha. When we're alone, please call me Saritha. You've literally been inside my dying nervous system. I think we're past formal titles. Saritha, then, I should clarify that my primary concern is your safety and the stability of the Empire. I didn't protect you because... I know. That's precisely why it matters. She turned to face him fully. Marcus, I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. I'm simply acknowledging that I trust you in ways I haven't trusted anyone since my mate died. And I want you to know that whatever develops between us, professional relationship, friendship, or something more, I value your presence in my life and in my daughter's life. Mama, can we plant one for Captain Marcus so he knows we want him to stay? Saritha looked at Marcus, her expression questioning. He thought about Earth, about the military career he was abandoning, about the life he'd known for 15 years. Then he thought about this garden, this child, this queen who was trying to build peace in a galaxy that seemed determined to tear itself apart. He thought about having a purpose that aligned with his values instead of conflicting with them. I'd be honored, he said. They planted the crystal flower together, the three of them kneeling in the rich soil. Lysa explained the ceremony with great seriousness. You had to think about the person while planting, concentrate on why they mattered. When the flower took root, it would carry those thoughts forever. Marcus felt both Saritha and Lysa's minds touch his gently, with permission this time. He felt their emotions, gratitude, affection, hope for the future, and he let them feel his in return. His determination to protect them, his growing attachment to this strange new life, his cautious optimism that maybe he'd finally found where he belonged. The flower bloomed immediately, its petals forming complex geometric patterns that pulsed with soft light. Lysa clapped her hands in delight. It's beautiful. Mama, look how bright it is. Sirith studied the flower, then looked at Marcus with an expression he couldn't quite read. Yes, she said softly. It certainly is. That night, after Lysa had been put to bed and the palace had settled into its evening routines, Marcus found himself in the Security Command Center, reviewing the day's threat assessments. His new position as Chief of Security came with significantly more responsibility than his previous role as undercover diplomat. He now had access to intelligence networks, military deployments, and confidential communications that revealed just how fragile the Empire's peace really was. Saritha entered quietly, carrying 2 cups of the Zerathi equivalent of tea. You should rest, Marcus. Pharaon's allies are contained for now. I'm seeing communication patterns that suggest at least 3 other noble houses are considering their own moves. I'm a reformist queen with a half-human security chief and no living mate. I'm a target for every traditionalist in the Empire. She handed him one of the cups. But that's a problem for tomorrow. Tonight I wanted to thank you properly, without my daughter broadcasting our emotions to the entire garden. Marcus accepted the tea, noting that she'd somehow learned how he preferred it, despite never asking. You don't need to thank me. I was doing my job. You saved my life while violating multiple treaties and probably ending your military career. That goes somewhat beyond job requirements. Saritha sat in the chair beside him, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. Marcus, I need to know something. When you linked our neural systems to accelerate the antidote, you felt everything I was thinking in that moment. What did you feel? He remembered. The poison spreading through her system, yes, but also her thoughts. Concern for Lysa, determination not to let the conspirators win, and underneath it all, an unexpected warmth directed at him. Trust, affection. Something that might have been the beginning of love. I felt that you're stronger than you let people see, Marcus said carefully. That you care more about your daughter and your people than your own survival. That you... He hesitated. That I what? That you see me. Not the soldier, not the diplomatic asset, not the human outsider. Just me. Nobody's done that in a very long time. Saritha reached out and took his hand, her long fingers interlacing with his. The psychic contact was gentle, controlled, just a whisper of her emotions. I do see you, Marcus Chen. I see someone who's tired of compromising his values for other people's politics. Someone who carries the weight of failures that weren't his fault. Someone who deserves to know that his presence makes the universe measurably better. Marcus squeezed her hand, letting his own emotions flow through the contact. Gratitude, growing affection, the strange sense of rightness he felt in her presence. I resigned my Earth commission today, made it official. Any regrets? He thought about his old life, the endless deployments, the moral compromises, the after-action reports on good people who died because he'd arrived too late. Then he thought about Lysa's laughter, the memory blossom they'd planted together, the way Saritha trusted him with truths she showed no one else. None, he said firmly. This is where I'm supposed to be. They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, watching the security monitors display the palace's peaceful evening routines. Outside, the capital city glittered with bioluminescent architecture. Somewhere in the palace, Lysa slept safely, protected by guards who'd been thoroughly vetted after the assassination attempt. The Empire continued its slow, difficult progress toward lasting peace. And Marcus Chen, formerly of Earth's diplomatic security, now chief protector of the Zarathi throne, finally felt like he'd found his purpose. Not in following orders or maintaining cover, but in choosing to stand for something worth protecting. Saritha's thoughts whispered through their joined hands. Thank you for choosing us, his thoughts whispered back. Thank you for letting me. In the garden below, the memory blossom they'd planted together glowed softly in the darkness, carrying emotions of trust and hope, and the beginning of something neither of them had expected but both were ready to explore. The crystal flowers around it pulsed in harmony, as if the garden itself approved. The universe was still dangerous. Conspiracies would continue. Threats would emerge. But for now, in this moment, there was peace. And two people learning to trust again. Connected by a child's innocent faith and a soldier's choice to protect what mattered most. It was enough. More than enough. It was everything.